There we go. Hello, everyone. Took a minute. For some reason, we had microphone issues. It is Friday night. We always have some technical difficulties. That's okay, because we are now live with OnCon04. Welcome. It's good to have you here. We will be talking about anime in history this weekend. Got a lot to talk about. Should be lots of fun. If you haven't been here before, OnCon is my virtual anime convention. I run now once a quarter, and features a whole bunch of panels and a viewing party and a charity auction. Some baking. I'll be baking some chocolate chip cookies tomorrow. Special chocolate chip cookies, actually not using traditional chocolate chips. We'll be using kind of traditional chocolate chips, the original chocolate chips, which should be fun. So a whole bunch of panels, bunch of stuff happening. And as I mentioned, the giveaway, I'll give you an idea of some of the stuff in the giveaway. We'll be giving away, for example, this issue of Megami Magazine, which features all sorts of artwork and stuff in there, and images, materials about various cute anime girls, because who doesn't want that? A lot of them in bathing suits and underwear and such, so just be aware of that. A lovely set on Villainous. My Life as a Villainous Season 1. So that's a fun one. So that will go to somebody in the charity auction tomorrow. That'll be fun. Hopefully. Just to be aware, during the charity auction, we are doing a shipping cost on there. So more details to come. But that'll be how all that works. But yes, we'll be talking about anime in history this week. And I actually wanted to start today by talking a little about anime in history. And I'd love to hear you folks in chat asking questions, talking about anime in general. When do you think anime began? Because that's an interesting question. I have my own opinion, but I also don't think it's necessarily always like the same thing everyone agrees on, right? Like different people can have different dates for this because it's kind of depends on how you define it, right? What is anime, after all? Is it just animation made in Japan? Well, there was animation made, many decades ago. So how do you pin that down? Where would you start, right? I think that's always the question. It's kind of defining your terms. Did anime start with the first, drawing on film? Because that goes back to the 1920s, at least, in Japan. There were early, animations done then. Is it the first, first animation that's not like a short film? Right? Like, short films are fine, but they're usually not like a mature market, mature industry. So that would be Momotaro's Divine Sea Warriors, Momotaro's, what's the new name of that? Momotaro's Sacred Sailors is the new translation of that. That's 1945. And so, yeah, exactly, Ginger. Early 1900s is a good starting point. And then the first anime. Well, and again, is it the first animated TV series? Well, there were TV series that included animation in the 50s, but they were segments, right? So you'd have a cartoon segment, during a show. And you had TV series, but they were 3-minute episodes, right? They're animated. Had those in the 50s as well. And the first weekly half-hour animated TV series was Astro Boy 1963, which a lot of folks kind of peg that to the beginning of anime. But again, it kind of depends on how you define it. There are a lot of different ways of looking at it. And I don't think any one of those is necessarily right or wrong. And it also kind of helps to know, again, if you there's a date that you have in your mind, but there are also different facets through which you can look at it. And those are all helpful to study and think about. I usually peg it at Astro Boy in 63 because that's really when the medium became distinctive. When you see a lot of the tropes of modern anime, the restricted animation, the single shots of just somebody reacting or whatever, or just somebody whatever, just a single unmoving image with maybe a little bit of stuff in the background. The lines. That's really what you start seeing in 1963. And it also doesn't help that Astro Boy started a huge boom, right? And that lots of folks started making animated TV series afterwards. And so you started seeing an industry form at that point. But it's one of those, how do you define it, really? I don't know. It's fine. And then there's also... So there's that, and then there's the evolution of anime. We had an interesting discussion a couple of weeks ago on the Weekly Dig about what were kind of the golden ages of anime. What were those periods where things were really... well, it depends on how you define golden age, again. Because some people define it as that point when a medium was really evolving, it was really coming into its own, was figuring itself out. While others consider golden age to be when it was at its peak. Right, when everything was kind of at its best. And so you could certainly point at, like, the late 70s as a period where the medium really matured dramatically. We started seeing shows like Heidi Girl of the Alps, Anne of Green Gables, Mobile Suit Gundam. Yamato was 74, but it was really... Yamato's an outlier. Like, really, there wasn't a lot of stuff, much like Heidi, actually. Very remarkable shows, but there weren't a lot of other things happening around it. It wasn't until really those late 70s you start seeing Captain Harlock, Galaxy Express 39s, some of those classics. But the animation was still definitely figuring itself out. It was not what we would look at today and say, yep, that's awesome. And it wasn't really until like the late 80s you started seeing animation really come together. In mid to late 80s, you start seeing just really gorgeous animation consistently in anime. Macross is a good example of kind of a bridge series where there's some gorgeous animation in Macross, but also a lot of just very simple, animation. But once you get to the late 80s, and obviously stuff like Akira, where the budget is just out of this world, you get some awesome stuff. But then there's also, and the other thing I wanted to talk about here today and this weekend with anime and history is also anime set in historical periods. Right? Anime set in the past. Because it's very surprisingly hard to find anime that is historically accurate. It's just not a common thing. Folks just don't seem interested in making like historically accurate anime. And obviously anime is an entertainment medium, right? It's meant to be about fun. And so trying to be rigorously historically accurate is not necessarily great. I'm wondering if folks in the chat could recommend anime that is set in that is reasonably historically accurate, right? It's not going to get every single detail perfectly right. But can you think of anime that is set like in the past that is actually representative of that past? Because there's not a lot. There's really not a lot. You look back at like Sengoku Basara, which is tons of fun, but you also have, horses with exhaust pipes on them. You have, what is it? There's actually one or two sort of gender swapped characters from the past. Where it's like, yeah, but it's not really like those characters in the same way. Emma, Victorian Romance Emma, great call out. Tracy CDT, absolutely. The author of the manga is famous for really digging in on historical accuracy and getting all the little details right. By the way, I should point out, on the Anime Archaeology Twitch channel, tomorrow, thanks to Nozomi Entertainment, we'll actually be streaming a bunch of historical anime, including Emma. So if you want to see Emma Victorian Romance, it is a romance series set in Victorian England. That will be showing tomorrow at twitch.tv/animearchaeology. So yeah, it's pretty cool. thanks to Nozomi Entertainment for their support of OnCon. Very much appreciated. And so we'll be getting that plus a whole bunch of stuff. We'll be getting Sengoku Collection, which is, again, one of those sort of gender-swapped anime. Rose of Versailles. His and Her Circumstances, which is sort of an encapsulation of 90s Japanese school life, particularly about how things had changed somewhat for people's expectations around school girl and schoolboy romance within that universe. And then Super Gals, which is an anime series about gal culture, of course in a fun, ridiculous way. But yeah, so those will all be streaming tomorrow on our Twitch channel. Rose of Versailles, obviously, and historically accurate, not in the sense of like every single character is historical, but in the sense that it is very much set in, the French court, and there are no, Pegasuses or spaceships or anything, right? A period piece. There are surprisingly few anime set like during the Sengoku period. Not actually all that much set during the Edo period, even, that's like historically accurate. I mentioned Tsukugaki Ran last time, as that is one of the more historically accurate Edo era anime. But again, there's not a lot of others that spring to mind. There's, people often talk about Samurai Champloo, but there's tons of inaccuracies in that one, or more accurately, stuff from the present brought back into there. Folks are, tagging and doing all sorts of very modern things in Samurai Champloo. It's an amazing series. It's a remarkable work, but it's unfortunately not that historically accurate in that way. And then there's Shigurui Death Frenzy, I believe, which is I believe that's a pretty grounded series. I'm trying to remember. I've seen like the first 4 episodes of that or so. That's kind of interesting. That there's just not a lot of like historical stuff. Rurouni Kenshin, obviously, it's a good glimpse into like the Meiji period, but you have some very shonen, battle tropes of ridiculous, over the top sort of action and such. People being able to, set their sword on fire by just dragging it across the ground, things like that, and like keep it on fire, and some questionable physics there. Kenshin being amazing again, but it is odd that the history is not that well represented, and I say that because when you think about history, when you think about anime is a medium meant to sort of entertain, right? And it's a medium that's historically been aimed mostly at kids, teenagers, kids and teenagers. So the younger set. I'll never forget being in Japan and seeing ads for Fairy Tail, which over here is targeted for a much older demographic, but the kids in the ads, and it was a very typical, running around with the action figures, playing out a scenario, but the boys in the ad were all like 8 years old. Like, it was clearly aiming at a much younger target demographic than we would target Fairy Tail over here. And so you'd think, for educational purposes, you'd set more anime during these historical periods, because it's a good, it's good for the kids to see, what it was like in that period. But it just doesn't seem to be a big thing. Dororo, again, set in very much set in that sort of very difficult period in Japanese history, a very war-torn period, and actually, and particularly the more modern one, is actually pretty good at representing clothing and so forth and so on. But of course, there's he's fighting demons the entire time, so a little different. So that's unusual. That's just not a big deal. So yeah. Let's see here. I want to see what else I wanted to mention. honestly, this opening ceremonies is more me talking to you all. So is there something you all want to know about anime and history, about historical anime, about anything in general? And I'll be happy to answer those questions. Because I'm really here for you tonight, and tomorrow will be more of a whole bunch of panels thrown at you. So whatever questions folks have, I am open to. Meanwhile, just a few other kind of quick notes. So tomorrow we have a whole bunch of panels. Noon we have Taco No Cooking. Cookies for charity. Then at 5:30 p.m., after a bunch of panels, we will be doing a con watch party on side 2. We'll be watching Miss Hokusai, which is a film set in a historical period. And charity auction at 7:30 p.m., where we'll be benefiting the 2020 Animator Dormitory Project, project to get better housing for Japanese animators. And then 8:30 tomorrow night, the weekly dig analyzing Miss Hokusai. It should be fun. Top 10 anime of all time. Honestly, it changes daily, H-Man. It just depends on how I feel, what I'm wanting, what I'm thinking about, right? And the problem is, like, boy, there's shows that I love a lot, but that also most people just probably would not appeal to an awful lot of people. Partly because they came to me at exactly the right time. And there's anime that's like important, that I think is amazing. Barefoot Gen, Grave of the Fireflies. That's not for everybody, right? I think Grave of the Fireflies is an amazing film, multi-layered, just tons of stuff going on. But I'm not going to recommend to folks sit down and watch Grave of the Fireflies tonight just because it's fun. It's not fun. So I'm going to scroll right now through my my anime list, which is very, very long. Actually, it's not literally myanimelist.com. It's anyway. And I'm going to throw out some things that are, really high, that are really big for me. Laid Back Camp, Serial Experiments Lane, Gundam in general. Let's see. Astro Boy 2003 is really impressive, extremely high budget. Combustible Campus Gardris is a wonderful parody of 90s anime and a 90s anime. Battle Athletes Victory, I loved watching, very, very early on. And is like the one anime that made me appreciate sports. Boogie Pop Phantom, dark, but fascinating. Bubblegum Crisis in general, really fun sci-fi stuff. Miyazaki's stuff. Princess Mononoke, I think, is his masterpiece. Bebop. Ironically, I'm not like the biggest fan of Bebop. It's amazing and fantastic, but it didn't like hit me the way it hit other people. I greatly enjoy it, but it's not like my favorite anime of all time. Die Guard is a sort of mecha parody show, while being sort of a big super robot show, and it's just fun and a neat sort of take on the medium. Deno Coil, I talk about this a lot. Near future show about augmented reality, and kind of what the augmented reality might mean, especially for kids. Digimon Tamers, Digimon Season 3. Top tier, in my opinion. See here. Fractal almost made me cry. Let's see here. The original Ghost in the Shell movie has taken a while to grow on me. When I first saw it, it seemed just a little bit too pretentious. But now I see what he was going for, and I'm really impressed by that film. And I'm in the G's now. an idea. Let me scroll back up. What's the best way you found to find out about new shows to watch and manga to read? So that's a great question, McPuffin. I usually go based on writers. So I'll find an anime that I like, find out who wrote it, and dig into that. Or find a manga that I like, and do that, and dig into all that stuff. It's really gonna be cool. That is for me a way I find to find interesting stuff, because usually the director isn't as strong of a predictor of whether I like something is whether who wrote it. Which is a really big deal. I will also literally just like go onto like Crunchyroll and look for anime of the era I'm familiar with, or I'm interested in. So I'll just look for anime of the 80s or anime of the 90s or whatever, and I'll just start checking out stuff. One of the things I find a lot of anime fans are hesitant to do, not you all, is that they won't like dip their toes into a show. Like they won't watch just like an episode just to check it out. They're really hesitant to do that because like, well, if I start watching it, then I need to finish it. And it's like, no, we don't do that for any other media, right? We're all willing to watch an episode of I don't know, Family Guy, and then not watch more of it if you don't want to. So that's the thing. I'll just try a bunch of stuff. Which period of Japanese history do you prefer to see anime in? I want to see more Sengoku era anime. Warring States period. I want to see more of that stuff, because that is a period in history that, unfortunately, Japanese folks get so much of that in school, I think, that's something that is so familiar that it doesn't seem, I guess it doesn't feel as exciting to make an anime about. So you just don't see as much of that as you do other stuff, which is just to me kind of frustrating, because I want to dig in more to that period. Yeah, Grave of the Fireflies is tough. Touch Your Baseball Girls, as far as I can tell, is very accurate. And again, as Unagi says, we are going to be doing we will have a panel on that tomorrow, digging into that, and I found that's really, really, really impressive for the length of that show. It gets into a lot. Do I watch Jujutsu Kaisen? I watched episode 1, and it was like, yes, this is a shonen series, and that's all I've seen. Nothing against it, just one of those shows that just didn't really connect with me. Does screening by studio work for newer shows? Not really, not for me, because studios tend to just... studios have a financial obligation to their employees to stay working continuously. And so they're not as interested in staying consistent necessarily. Obviously, they'll have an art style or an animation style. But because of that pressure to keep working, I found they'll take on projects that just don't interest me as much as some of their other projects. It's a very different kind of thing. Do I collect scale figures too? I have some Gunpla that I put together. And that's about it, though. I don't collect like the anime girl figurines. I've 3D printed a few, but that's the thing. I'm not a person who gets a big charge out of spending $100 on a figure and then having it sit on my shelf. I just don't get $100 worth of joy at looking at that anime girl or whatever. Just doesn't connect with me. Love Must Be Shiro, goes to the show movie a lot. Standalone Complex was life changing for me. Yeah, I mean, Standalone Complex is kind of, if you're going to watch one Ghost in the Shell anime, I would aim folks for that one. It is closer to the manga. Not that the anime has to be exactly like the manga, especially because the manga is only one volume. Like it's never going to be exactly like that. But that's the thing. So yeah, Standalone Complex is an amazing adaptation. An adaptation in the larger sense, where they're not, obviously there's one volume of manga, so they can't stretch that out over a full season. So they're like, okay, let's figure this out and then tell stories within that. And it's really, really cool. and the Tachikoma. You know, you get that whole plot line, which are we at the point we need to stop collecting anime stuff, figures, Blu-rays, manga? Yes. I have reached that point, actually. I reached that point a few years ago. I don't really collect any anime stuff anymore. I use streaming. I'll buy things if it's not available anywhere, but you know, I don't really buy, you know, anime stuff. It's just not. It doesn't define me as an otaku. Especially with all the streaming services out there, there's plenty of anime to watch without having to collect it. Hey. So that is the idea there. What kind of shows do I connect with? What kind of shows do I watch or even currently watching? It's weird. Well, it's not weird. It's changed. That's the really surprising thing. There's anime that it used to be I was into anime that was thought-provoking. Lame. Ghost in the Shell. Boogie Phantom. You know, all of those weird, thoughtful Key the Metal Idol, all the stuff from the 90s and so forth. And then I found myself buying a lot of really stupid, over-the-top comedies and loving those. Penny Pony Dash is the one that I often was the one that made me really realize this. Azumanga Daioh, I have in manga over there. And yeah, that's the thing. By the way, getting back to the earlier question, one of the reasons I don't collect as much anymore is because of something that somebody in chat once said to me during a live stream. We were talking about manga and buying manga and so forth, and this person said, yeah, I don't really I don't really reread manga. So I don't really buy much of it. You know, I'll go to the library and whatever, and I'll trade whatever. And I thought about that for a while, and I was like, yeah, I don't really rewatch a lot of anime. I don't really reread a lot of manga. I don't need to own a copy, you know, in case I'm going to get back to it someday. I just don't really do that much. And there's so much more being produced. You know, the chance I'm going to go back to something when there's all this new stuff to consume. Yeah, right. So, props to whoever said that years ago. So yeah, thoughtful works, ridiculous comedies. Then there's a variety of stuff. Tenchi Muyo is a franchise that I really cut my teeth on as an anime fan. And that's just kind of everything. It's a mishmash of action and romance and comedy and some melodrama and so forth. And I just like all of those pieces in there. If I want a tour of my current collection of manga anime, well, the manga collection is right there. So that's all the manga I currently own. So you can see the whole thing. So it's a lot to tour through, as you might imagine. And unfortunately, I've got the headphones. Well, the headphones don't matter. But you couldn't hear me from the microphone. So the ones that I will kind of point out that were really kind of big for me are Blam, right there, Blame by Tsutomu Nihei. Also have Knights of Sidonia. Love that. Buddha by Osamu Tezuka, which, yes, is an 8-volume history of the life of the Buddha. Let's see here. Delicious in Dungeon, right down there. You kind of can't quite see it. About a bunch of folks running through a dungeon and trying to eat all of the animals in there. Gundam, I have. That's basically a whole row of Gundam. Like 1.5. The original Ghost in the Shell manga, and that is actually the original. So just sucks for a minute. This is actually the original print of the Ghost in the Shell manga, first edition, basically. So this is the one that was actually censored, and does not include one page of some folks kind of getting it on. Master Keaton, I like a lot. It is about a sort of a James Bond, Indiana Jones insurance adjuster. Really cool. Phoenix by Osamu Tezuka, which is sort of his analysis of life, the universe, and everything. Rurouni Kenshin, which I will just haven't read all of it yet though. That's soon on my list. And Yotsuba to or Yotsuba. Which is about a 5-year-old girl just living her life, having fun. You know, that's very much the tone. Those fun movie things. So yeah, maybe someday I'll do a whole video about all the whole collection. But those are kind of the highlights. Yeah, YouTube is wonderful. We'll never get an anime probably, sadly. But just get the manga, you know, just go get the manga. And yes, 4chan kind of adopted her as their mascot. So if you've been on 4chan, you'll probably recognize Yotsuba. And I've got manga all the way there. Anime collection. Well, that's difficult. 1 second. They want to see the anime collection.
Are you self-incriminating if you show it all on screen? Oh, the physical.
This is some of it. 1 second. This is more of it. And this is the last of it. So let me just pull out, for example, D through F. You want to see? And we'll just do it this way. I mean, Den of Coil. Digimon, Season 1, Season 2, Season 3, Dirty Pair, Union Tank Police, Dojin Work, which I have not seen yet, Dororo, this is the original 1966 Dororo anime adaptation. Yes, that was a thing. Unfortunately, this is not subbed or dubbed. Dot Hack Sign. Love that show. Dot Hack Another Twilight. Dr. Slump movies. Those are fun. 3 Meter Mary, which I need to finish one of these days. Dual Parallel Trouble Adventure. Oh, I didn't see all of this stuff. Yep, I got rid of the cases. What is that? Pat Labor? No. We're in the G's. What could this be? Eden of the East? Eden of the East. That's what that is. Yeah, no, the cases took up way too much room. F for Tale of Memories and A Tale of Melodies. El Hazard. Elchia, which I do not recommend. Ergo Proxy, which I have not seen. Some of. Escaflowne. Oh, Vision of Escaflowne. Eureka 7. X-Driver, again, do not recommend. Fafner. Fight Xer 1. Figure 17, which I've talked about before. And yeah, it just kind of goes on and on like that. Furikuri. Fractale. Fruits Basket. We've got, nope. And From the New World, which I have not seen. Full Metal Panic. Oh, love Full Metal Panic. Multiple Full Metal Panics here, as you can see. And Full Metal Alchemist, which I also have not seen. So that's D through F. I have just over 1,000 discs here. That's the collection. So yeah, that's that. And now I have to move these all over the place. Let's see here. Yeah, just over 1,000. Have I been replacing DVDs with Blu-rays to save space? Not really, just because, at this scale, right? Like I don't really have that many more discs to collect. I'm not, and I have like enough space. I can kind of, I can keep 8 discs instead of 4. That's fine. Also, I don't want to spend all that money. Did I say Fruits Basket? Yes, I do have a copy of Fruits Basket. I have only got like 10 episodes into it. Really enjoyed it. That was the original 2001 adaptation. And I watched the first episode of the new version and was like, oh, it's it's the old version. And I know they went in other directions, but I was like, okay, that's I don't need to watch the new version, all that kind of stuff. Well, I don't know what better means, unfortunately. So, last anime I bought. That's a great question. It was a long time ago. It was probably the Turn A Gundam box set. I had found, I had already seen it through various means, and then it came up on Right Stuff, and I snapped that up because that's probably my favorite Gundam. Personally, I could argue for other Gundam for other reasons, but that's the one that hit me the hardest, in terms of just being just right for me, But yeah. Boy, I'm scrolling back through all the other anime on the list to recommend, and there's so many. So many. My Dear Marie. Yeah, Under 7. Criminally under scene show. Now and then, here and there. Whoa. Yeah. And I mean, one of the reasons I have all this stuff is that I started getting into anime back in the 90s, when you could only get it on like VHS and then DVD, and so I couldn't stream. I couldn't find it any other way. There were no thumb drives. There were no streaming services. There were no download services. Downloading an episode of anime would take literally a day back then. So had to buy it, and so the collection just grew and grew and grew and grew, and that's the way it is. Yeah, agreed. Now and then, here and there is probably my favorite isekai. War on Geminar actually is probably my favorite. My favorite isekai, in the sense that I enjoy watching it, but that's the thing. My Mal account. It is my anime list. It's Brent Newhall. So if you're looking for me, I'm just going to put that in there. However, I only keep analyst.co updated. I just prefer the UI of Analyst. That's ANILIST.co. I think I can type it in. Yeah. Mal I just found kind of annoying, and Analyst a little more modern. So that Analyst, I believe, is completely up to date. Do be aware, I don't really use stars or that kind of stuff on Analyst. I really just keep it as a record of stuff I've watched. I don't really write reviews there anywhere. It's just here's the list of everything I've watched. So unfortunately, you're not going to see a lot of I gave this 5 stars or that whatever. Here are my thoughts on it, because again, it's just so much. But yeah, I try to snap up Brent Newhall the account on as many places as I can, just for that simplicity. That way you always know it's me, is the idea. Do I remember the VHS days? This is a VHS copy of Mighty Space Miners, which, in case folks are wondering, and there it is, which I keep for a number of reasons. And so if folks are curious, like, this is what it would come as. And you get, the stuff on the side, and then the back. And I think, what would it say? The funny thing is, this does not say whether it's subbed or dubbed. I'm surprised. Yeah, there we go. English dubbed. They usually try to tell you because people were very, very, very concerned. And they didn't have, one or the other. This is the only VHS I still have from that time. All the others I ripped, I made digital copies of. But this one I keep because incredibly obscure anime. It's a 2-episode OVA of what's supposed to be 3, because they made 2 episodes and they ran out of money, and they never finished it. So it's literally unfinished. The 3rd episode was never made. But for some reason, not only did it get released on VHS over here in America, it got released on DVD twice. So I just keep this around as a reminder of how bizarre the anime licensing industry is over here. I bought this thinking, there will never be another copy of this. This will be my only copy forever. And then, let's see here. Any new arrivals to the old multi-season long run anime that made in Coco City, Hunter, Ranma, etc.? I don't really think that way, to be honest. I was never big into those long running shows. I liked the shorter shows. Again, nothing against them. I just wasn't really into that. Unfortunately, I tried watching Maze on Ikoku, and that first episode is all frustrational humor. It's all people being jerks to the main characters, and I was just like, I'm not into this. And I understand it gets better later on, so that was just kind of annoying. Let's see here. My answer to Asuka versus Rei is Mari Illustrious, personally. Mari is my jam. That is the kind of girl I like in that situation. So I will punt on that particular thing. Thank you, Defense One. Any long animes I like? Sure, Galaxy Express 39s. It's very episodic, but that is the one that I'm impressed by. I have not watched all of it because it's 300 episodes or something. It's absurdly huge. But yeah, that's one of the ones that really worked for me. Other than that, I'm trying to think of what else. I think I have nothing against long anime, but I just normally don't get sucked into them. First anime depends on how you count. Let's see here. When I was a kid, my favorite cartoon was Voltron, Defender of the Universe. Hey, Philippa. So I watched Voltron as a kid growing up, but I didn't know it was anime. It was just another cartoon on TV. Yes, I'm that old. And I loved that show. It was science fiction. It had fantasy elements. It had, robot lions. It was awesome. But again, I didn't know it was anime. And then when I was a teenager, the Sci-Fi Channel ran festivals of anime during the summer. And they would do these. So basically, they would show 2 anime movies back to back during a week, or an OVA, Monday through Friday. And I watched that and became aware of this being Japanese animation, and I saw 3 things: Dominion Tank Police, Project Eiko, and Tenchi Muyo in Love. And I'll get to all these questions in a moment. And oh boy, those really impressed me in different ways. And so that was the point at which, and I actually remember the thought going through my head, I now want to investigate this and become familiar with it. I transitioned from I'm aware of this thing existing to I want to invest time in this. I felt like a fan of it in the broader sense. And then a little while later, I got my wisdom teeth extracted. And I had just bought on Amazon, because Amazon had just opened the anime section of its DVD catalog, DVD section. And there were like 12 things in it. And one of them was the Tenchi Muyo Perfect Collection, which was the original 2 OVAs, technically 3. The 2 big OVAs and Mahoshi Special. I just bought that for only $99, only $120. So that had been shipped to me. So I was sitting in my bed in screaming agony as I was waiting for the drugs to kick in, and I put that into my DVD player, my 1X DVD player, and popped that in and watched it, and I became an anime fan at that point. Just everything about Tenchi Muyo spoke to me. It was perfect. It was weird, but it was it had well-defined characters. It was funny. It had melodrama. It actually executed on a lot of these things around like its characters. It would build up things around its characters and things that actually happen. Come on, focus, camera, focus. I'm right here. There we go. And that was the thing. Oh my gosh, that was my show. So yeah, it was kind of I kind of grew as I watched different things. Do I like Naruto? Yes, but I have not seen all of it because, let's be honest. Naruto is kind of oxygen. Naruto's just there. Everyone's familiar with Naruto, but most people haven't seen every minute of Naruto. Am I caught up on One Piece? No. And I probably never will. Gundam Wing was also formative for me as well, actually. Gundam Wing is a show I watched with a friend of mine, and I just fell in love with. I'd seen no other Gundam before it. I'd seen basically no other mecha except for Voltron and such. But Gundam Wing was my jam. I love Gundam Wing beyond all reason. Thoughts on fan service? Yeah. Tenchi Muyo is actually where a lot of my thoughts on fan service coalesced. Because there is fan service in Tenchi Muyo, but it always is in service of the plot. Which sounds weird, but fan service is usually used to showcase somebody's thoughts on somebody else, somebody's feelings on somebody else. And that I think is when fan service can be useful, when it's used to demonstrate character. There are definitely romance series which would have fan service, and where that is a character acting out, a character, making use of her body or what have you. And I think that is an effective use of it. That said, we live in a society which regularly sexualizes the female character or the female body in ways that are unhealthy. And so there is a fundamental underlying element to fan service that's creepy and unhelpful and unhealthy in a lot of ways. But, I think it can, there are times when it is completely superfluous and pointless, and times when it can be used for the story at least. Yeah. Go. In Tokusatsu, not so much. I've seen bits and pieces, and I appreciate it. I enjoy what I've seen. Tokusatsu is one of those things where if a friend of mine and I were to sit down and say, let's watch some, Kamen Rider, I'd be, sure, great, I'd love to. But it just hasn't invaded my consciousness to the point where I'm going to sit down and now watch, Kamen Rider S or whatever. Do I prefer Tenchi OVA or Tenchi Universe? 6 in one, half dozen the other. I think they have their pluses and minuses. Again, Tenchi Muyo OVA was how I got into it, but Tenchi Universe has Kione, and I have a difficult time with Tenchi Muyo without Galaxy Police Officer First Class Kione. Your first Gundam was War in the Pocket. Wow, that's an experience. Oh, that's rough. Because not a lot of other Gundam is like that. It's a very specific Gundam show. Am I familiar with Inio Asano or Taiyo Matsumoto? They do not immediately leap out, but I'm going to search them real quick. I've been getting more and more into manga of late. Not necessarily less anime, but just it's really nice to be able to, you know, go through a volume or two in an evening. Boy. Holograph. Oh, Solanin. Right. Familiar with, have not seen much of any of Asano's works, but I love his style. And Tayamatsu, Tekken Concrete, Ping Pong. Have I read any of his works? I have not. But again, familiar with both of those. What an anime today they steer away. Why an anime today they steer away from space and giant robots? Ironically, Yoshiki Tomino of Gundam talked about that recently. To an extent. Actually, he's talking about Gundam and mecha in general. Part of the problem is that stuff, unless it's Gundam, doesn't sell. There have been a lot of mecha series tried over the past couple of decades, and they've just kind of fizzled in general. It doesn't sell the way it used to. Part of that is because the fandom changed. Fans in the 70s and 80s were generally teenage boys who were really into war shows and science fiction and all that kind of stuff. And fandom has broadened out. People are into different things now, and just that fandom isn't there. You don't run into a lot of even sci-fi fans today who could talk about, in the West, who could talk about, Asimov and Bradbury. So, the giant robot thing just doesn't resonate the way it used to, because most folks aren't, a lot of anime fans are not science fiction fans anymore, and that used to be the Venn diagram used to be much more overlap back in the day. Which is just the way things have changed. Into older mecha series like Dankoga, Mazinger, etc. Not so much into, but again, I appreciate them. I've seen bits and pieces, and I've seen an episode here and there. Again, I kind of like a bit more depth than what those shows provide, so I can enjoy them, but I'm not going to sit down and watch every minute of them necessarily. Yeah, no, absolutely, and man, most manga fans just they shrug. They just don't go back to the classics. Astro Boy is great. Unfortunately, with Astro Boy, a lot of it has never been some of it's never been released in English, partly because it's been changed. Tetsuko would go back and change Astro Boy. So a lot of those older versions just never got into English because why are we going to go back and try to explain all these different revisions and so forth? So it's hard to find. I have volumes 1 through 18 of Astro Boy. I don't think that's probably not even half of what exists out there. It's kind of crazy. So Astro Boy is kind of a weird case where you're, unless you can read Japanese, you're probably never going to read all of Astro Boy, but you can read a lot of it, which is cool. Because for a long time you couldn't at all. But yeah. It's true of anime fans as well. Anime fans don't go back and watch, Mazinger. That kind of stuff. Yeah. Actually, I had a question for you, Ginger, from what I was talking about earlier. The ads on Japanese television for shonen series, I may have asked you this before, do they generally target young boys? What's the target audience of a One Piece ad or whatever? How old are the kids in those ads? I wonder. Because over here we think of One Piece as a show for 15-year-olds. But yeah, I love history, and I love the scope of a medium. One of the reasons I like doing stuff like this and the channel and so forth is because I think when you get into something, it's very helpful to go back and check out the classics and dig into, okay, what are the foundational works in this medium? Because then you understand all the jokes they're making, all the ridiculous stuff. You understand. Oh, that's a joke about this other older thing. Okay, fair enough, Ginger. Yeah, it's more of a, and that is the other difficulty with Japan is that merchandising over there is just so much broader. Yeah, the whole, yeah, a whole run of Astro Boy in English, not chronological order. Yeah, that's the problem, and they say that somewhere in the releases where they're like, we could go back to like the very original versions of this, but they were really crude, and Tetsuko went back and like redrew them. So and that's a great point, and man, they're not really meant to be binged. They are very much products of their time when this was consumable weekly, just entertainment for kids. And so you're meant to just kind of, check out this week's issue and then come back next week and not really concentrate the way we do. Obviously, Tezuka was looking for some deeper things there, but not really his intent. Not really the magazine's intent or the way the medium had built. Cool. Well, we're just about at 8 o'clock. I will be happy to answer any final questions, and then we will end the stream for the night so that we can get ready for tomorrow at 9 a.m. with Greek Myth in 30 minutes. Followed by, I'll be talking about South Korean animation, which is a passion of mine. I've actually been watching some Chinese animation lately that's mind-blowingly, impressive. Yeah. To quote Adam Sheehan of Funimation, one of the great things about Dragon Ball is that there are new boys turning 8 years old every day. It's like, yeah, it's true. Reading or watching Urusei anime or manga first? That's a good question. I could not answer that. That's a really good question, Patrick. Yeah, I had the singles of Astro Boy. Never got to the omnibuses. And unfortunately, the singles are starting to yellow. They're starting to fade, which saddens me. But that is the nature of physical media. Darned entropy. Cool. I think that will do it for us for tonight then. Thank you so much for stopping by. This is again just sort of a quick look at anime and history. People ask what makes Korean anime your favorite. It's not my favorite per se, just to be clear. But what fascinates me is that South Korea has been supporting the Japanese industry for so long. A lot of the basic sort of work of animation, a lot of the in-between drawings of anime is has been done in Korea a lot. So there's been a lot of that work being done in South Korea, kind of uncredited. Like you'll see a studio in the background, but no, most anime fans were not really aware of this. And the South Korean animation industry, which did some really impressive stuff in like the 60s and 70s, became really moribund for a while, and then really started to do some really interesting things just in the past 10, 15 years or so. And it's really cool. There's some amazing stuff being made in South Korea these days. And we're talking traditional hand-drawn animation as well as CGI. Where can you see Chinese animation? Well, good news. Spectrum Man, oh boy. I'm looking up a name. There we go. So if you want to look at some CGI animated films, which I definitely recommend, there is Neja, which I will put in the chat, and Zhang Jia. Make sure I get that right. These are two of the most successful non-US animated films of all time. They were both made in China within the past couple of years. And they're both on Netflix with dubs, if you want them. Neja is an action comedy, more like Kung Fu Panda, while Zhang Jia is a historical action drama. So think, again, Rurouni Kenshin, without the comedy, really. There's not much comedy in Zhang Jia. It's pretty serious. Zhang Jia is, not gonna lie, the most beautiful CGI animated film I've ever seen in my life. Straight up. Other Chinese like hand-drawn animation's hard to find, and that's what I've been digging into recently, trying to find some more of their hand-drawn stuff. Thank you, Muffin. I appreciate that. Let's see here. Yeah. So that is that. And then let's see what else tomorrow. Unagi Observer has a panel on various elements of historical things that show up in anime. I'll be making cookies at noon Eastern. I'll be doing a brief history of mecha and giant robots at 1 p.m. Then Unagi Observer will be talking about the guns of Tanegashima, which show up all over the place in anime. There'll be a panel on Taisho Baseball Girls, anime series set in the 1920s. And then finally a panel by Ginger Gaiden about anime that helps, sort of healing anime, which is really cool. Then we'll watch Miss Hokusai, auction off some stuff for charity. Stuff like, for example, Gargantian the Verger's Planet and Gasaraki, two very interesting mecha series from two very different eras. Pretty cool. And then we'll be analyzing that. Analyzing Miss Hokusai later in the evening. So that's all coming up. Hope to see you all tomorrow for all of that. And thank you all for stopping by. We'll look forward to chatting with you all then. Take care. See you all then. And if you have any questions about stuff during the con, I will be around checking chat for that. So thank you all so much. See ya. Bye-bye.